Hello and welcome to a special bonus episode of the Press Start podcast, Press Start Australia's weekly video game discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ewan, joined today by my fellow gamers and co-hosts Kieran,
Hello.
Shannon,
Hello.
and James.
Hello.
We come to you today to discuss the Summer Game Fest showcase, which we all got up bright and early, or in some cases stayed up all night to watch in the early hours of this morning. As we often do when we discuss showcases and events, most recently the PlayStation showcase, I suppose, I want to start by first asking you what you all thought about the showcase, just kind of top line in general, and then we can do the rounds and kind of pick each other's brains on what our highlights of the show were. James, perhaps I will start with you. You did the write-up on all the big announcements from the showcase, so I imagine your mind's kind of thinking of the event as a whole. What was your impression of the showcase?
It was fine. I think I had this thing today where I was thinking, well, every time we say it's average or shit or I don't know, I don't think we've actually been wowed for a long time. So maybe this is just the new standard. So I don't know if it's fair to keep saying that there was average, but I think overall it was okay. A solid pass for me. That's a 5 out of 10. But I would let him do another show after this.
I'm glad Jeff Keighley has your approval.
Yeah,
it was also the first live in-person event. They started during COVID with the lockdown, so they were kind of online only sort of showcases initially. Yeah. Do you think there was any noticeable difference in having people in the room, hearing people's reactions in the audience?
No, I didn't feel that. I don't think there was I mean, I wasn't there obviously, so I can't talk about that as much. But
sure.
I mean, I don't think there was anything, to be honest, that was scream worthy. Do you know what I mean? I don't obviously we'll get into some of the stuff later that was kind of big and exciting. But I don't think there was anything that was super surprising. So yeah, I didn't feel that anything was different. I don't even think I heard. Did we hear audience reactions in the stream?
Yeah.
I can't even. Oh, did we? Okay. Yeah, right. See,
I think the biggest one was just when Jeff dropped the DoorDash ad.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
What a great little moment that was. I'm so glad that wasn't. I'm so glad we got a Final Fantasy announcement after that in the end, because otherwise that would have been a really sore spot for the show. And I feel like taking it down a couple of points, but thank God that he had the announcement at the end of the show that he did. Yeah. Shannon, what about you? How did you feel the show was overall?
It was okay. It was good. I felt like it was not as badly paced or as long as some of his other shows that often go 2.5 or 3 hours. It was nice to have a few things that didn't leak, in terms of big franchises, but I don't. Yeah, it probably needed a few big bangers, and I think we all had that vibe before it happened that he wasn't hyping it up as much as he normally would, and there wasn't really much talk about the show in general. So I feel like it was probably about what I expected. Like James said, yeah, it just was okay.
I think it was fine. If I was to try and summarize up into one word, there was enough announcements in there that I was jazzed about, that it wasn't it wasn't a bust. It wasn't regretting getting up at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to watch it. But yeah, I don't know if it didn't kind of feel like it packed as big a punch as we've kind of seen from E3s in years past, and maybe I again had my expectations wrong kind of going into this. I thought we might have seen more from the third parties, maybe more from PlayStation. I guess not Xbox, seeing as they got to showcase themselves. But yeah, it's what games they did announce, whilst interesting, weren't the kind of big heavy hitters that I had hoped for. You remember our predictions podcast, I was hoping we might see a Sony first party game we hadn't yet seen, and that wasn't the case.
I think it's just I think this year it's probably being spread too thin. I feel like if the PlayStation showcase and this one wished together as sort of one showcase, if everything that was in both was in one of them, it would have been good, really good.
even Capcom, like obviously they
Mm.
have their own showcase later. And I don't know if they planned that later or something, but obviously their contribution this time was like that weird Exo Primal trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean by spreading thin. Like I feel like yeah.
And it's like starting to mention some of the announcements, and Kieran, I'm conscious we haven't come to you for initial thoughts yet, but like if we hadn't heard about Spider-Man recently and we hadn't like seen what we'd seen of Alan Wake recently, I feel like this show
And
would have
Mortal
hit a
Kombat.
lot harder. And Mortal Kombat, exactly, another good point. Had we not heard about those games like already in the past month, this would have been a very, very different showcase. But I don't know if that's just the nature of what Keighley's working with. The brands still want to own the conversation as much as they can and just offer a tidbit more for Keighley. But yeah, I think he would have had a hell of a show had all of that not happened prior. Kieran, though, before we delve deeper into the games and announcements themselves, how was your read of the show as a whole?
Yeah, I thought it was all right. I think like probably the best thing I can say about it is it was like mostly gameplay or mostly like in-engine kind of stuff. There wasn't a lot of CGI present, which was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, like everyone was saying, I feel like a lot of it just felt like the end of a conversation that we'd started earlier in other showcases, like the Spider-Man release date, you know, like the Final Fantasy gameplay, the Mortal Kombat gameplay. It's like all this stuff that, you know, they started talking about and then kind of stopped for a bit, and then we kind of got the end of it this morning.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if it's just like the prolonged release cycles that we're seeing in games now, but these shows just feel like things are being talked about every year. Whereas, you know, back in the golden era of E3, it was like new stuff every year. Or at least for the most part. So, you know, you kind of get the same games for 2 or 3 years at a time. And I think that takes away some of the wow factor.
Yeah, I feel like they're not like maybe developers and publishers are scared to announce games like 3, 4, 5 years out because we're not really getting those like announcements that you feel at 3+ years in the future. Like everything feels like Kieran said, stuff that we've seen for 2 or 3 years, or it's out in January or February.
Yeah. And we've also got more games as a service sort of things featuring as well, where it's like, okay, we've got Call of Duty and Fortnite back again this year with like their latest update, and even like Dying Light had an update. And whilst like that's big news for the communities that lap up every little bit of content for those games, for everyone else that has, you know, already parked that game or cast it from mind, it loses some of its appeal. And yeah, you mentioned as well, Kieran, like having people up on stage, like as good as that is, I think it has to be quite sparing and like keep people's time tight. I feel like Nicolas Cage, as fun as it was seeing him there, just did not need to be up on stage as long as he was. And having Will Arnett like introduce the Twisted Metal trailer as well, I just didn't feel like that was necessary either. Anyhow, we've definitely touched on a lot of the announcements and the games that were up for discussion as part of the showcase. So I'm eager to kind of get into our highlights and lowlights even of the show. James, maybe I'll come back to you to kick this off. What were you excited to see announced and shown off during the showcase?
My one is pretty obvious, but I think it's Mortal Kombat. Just seeing Mortal Kombat in action, was really exciting. I still don't feel like it looked quite as like next gen-y as I'd like, but like I do think it flows better. It looks very good.
Yeah. What did you make of the whole cameo system?
Yeah, with fighting games, like you just need to kind of play it to get a vibe for how that works and stuff.
Yeah.
But I can definitely respect that. Like I can see where they're going with it. I think there's cool potential there to introduce characters who maybe haven't been in the spotlight for a while, but who they don't really think are popular enough to maybe put the time and effort in to make like a full character. Do you know what I mean? Because there's hundreds of characters now that they've made in all the games.
Yeah.
But
I think we
like,
just heard Billy and Ollie putting in their addition to appeal as Mortal Kombat characters.
Yeah, they do
Vicious.
it. Guest DLC. But yeah, like I think it looks good. I am excited to. I like that for once they've actually announced it, and it's like 3 months away. Like I think we were talking about that before. Like that. Yes, they've been working on it for 4 years, and it's kind of remarkable that it didn't leak until like a few weeks before the announce.
Yeah.
Last.
Do you know?
month or
I
the
was
month
thinking
before.
about this today because like as much as I love the kind of banger showcases that we've had in the past where they announce like 5 years worth of games like in the space of an hour, there's kind of been a pushback on that as well at the same time. Like people saying, only announce a game like 6 months out when it's ready and you're confident you
Well,
can hit the date. And it's like, maybe we kind of want the cake and to be able to eat it too. Like we want a bit of both worlds.
I think a good example of that is Microsoft. Like look at all of those games they've announced, and we haven't really seen anything of for months, maybe well, even years. And like, I guess I recognize that their strategy is going to be different given they're very subscription based. But like, it definitely creates this almost like air of disappointment every show because like,
you
we've
didn't
got
hear
these
anything more about
first party games that we know exist, but we haven't heard anything about.
Yeah.
So like,
and people want to see them and new stuff in addition as well. Like you don't just want to see those 8 games. Like they want to see another 5 announced, and it's just not realistic.
Yeah.
Even like Capcom now, like Resident Evil tends to get a 6-month gap between announcements. Well, we have another guest, another cameo on the video podcast. But
everything
even, like,
happening in this bonus app.
Yeah, absolutely. A bonus in itself, if you will. What was I talking about? Now I've lost my train of thought. Yeah.
We want
6
some
months
Maccas now.
and 6 months from announcement to release is good. I hope that happens in the future for most games.
Yeah. It was pleasing to see some release dates attached to a lot of the games that were discussed as part of this as well.
So many vague though end of 2023 games. Have you noticed that?
That's fair.
Like less than 6 months away, but you haven't dated it. Like I find
I'll
that really
take a
weird.
window over nothing though. Like I would rather a
True.
window than just silence on it. Getting
Like,
a
Warhammer's
release
meant
date
to
for
be-
Witchfire, I was excited for.
Yeah, I know you are.
Even if it's early access, but yeah, okay. I'm excited about Witchfire.
You're allowed to be. I'm not saying
Sue
anything,
me.
mate. Relax. But like even like Warhammer, it's like it's coming out before the end of August, but like it's June.
Yeah, that's
like, that's weird to me. Like,
yeah.
But yeah.
Well, like on the topic of things I was also excited about, I want to shout out Lies of P as well. That game continues to look really cool. Bloodborne is one of only a couple of Souls games that I've kind of dabbled with. And this obviously looks very, very similar, both kind of in terms of gameplay and aesthetics and tone. And I've got the demo downloaded now and installed, but haven't yet had an opportunity to give it a go, obviously. But yeah, looking forward to that. Kieran, your mic is spicy today. It's doing something different every time. I appreciate you muting. Yeah, I appreciate you muting it and unmuting it.
Strutting in with the chicken tenders.
Guys, this is a bonus episode, right? There's no rules.
The
There's
dogs
no
are in
rules in
here
this
now.
one. This is a
All
freebie.
bets are
Kieran, I am coming your way. What were some of your highlights from the show?
Well, I mean, hopefully this comes through all right. But I obviously like Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth was big, and that was cool to see like a lot of in-game stuff and a lot of hints at like what story and gameplay implications are going to be in it. So that was cool. And also Sonic Superstars was a nice surprise, I think.
Yeah.
Like I do love a traditional 2D side-scrolling Sonic game, and it looks pretty as hell. So that's a plus. But yeah, other than that, like again, like a lot of the stuff is just like stuff we already knew existed. So it was just again cool to see like a Dragon Gaiden getting a release date for that was good.
Yeah,
that looks sick.
Was that this year as well or next year?
Yeah, it's in November.
Wow.
So 2 from that series in 1 year, which is cool.
Going back to Final Fantasy, besides the kind of noticeable thing of it being on 2 discs, I think, I nearly said a different word, discs. You guys might have to explain to me like how this is all shaking out, because obviously I'm a newcomer to Final Fantasy. 7 Remake was might have been the first Final Fantasy game. No, I played 15. One of only a couple of Final Fantasy games I've played to completion. But like I didn't have the history with 7 and understand like what they had done differently with the story and what these like weird paranormal ghosts were doing and like messing with timelines and stuff. So like help me out. Like how are you making sense of this Rebirth trailer and how it's influencing the story going forward?
Well, I'm not, because I never finished Final Fantasy VII originally. Like,
right. Okay.
Remake is probably the most I know about that game out of everything else in the series.
So it's uncharted territory for you as well.
Yeah,
a little
wow. I
bit,
didn't
which is
expect that.
exciting.
See,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah,
surprise.
it's like the only one that I haven't properly played.
Yeah, right. Um, this is to me the thing about like FF7 remake is like it almost isn't a remake. It feels more like a sequel in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. Which
I've
like
I've seen people describing almost like an alternate dimension version of it as well.
well, like we don't quite know what they're doing yet, but like they are definitely not following the original game.
Yeah.
So like, which like to me is like kind of like I mean it's not really a remake anymore, right? It's called Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I guess that's
Maybe
the
telling.
A
technicality.
rebirthing, if you will.
Well, yeah, like I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see something else, and obviously, like I've gone through like most of my life, like with the story of FF7 in my head, and
Yeah.
obviously this has flipped that on, and that was good for me. Like that's probably the thing I liked the most about FF7 remake. Like there were aspects I hated about it, but like overall, like I think it did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Um,
We all agreed
But-
that train yard scene went on for too long. But
awful. Like that's what I hope. I hope that now that they've got to that bit where like, because admittedly that first section of the game is to expand that to a whole game was a stretch.
yeah.
And I've already talked about at length how I feel about how it builds up the villain. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, like this new trailer, it's exciting to see like just the stuff that I remember.
Yeah.
In like these crazy graphics. It's the stuff that you kind of like always saw or thought about online, but never actually happened.
Yeah.
I just like the mental image that you've just gone through your entire life, just like always thinking about the story of Final Fantasy VII.
No, like
At
what I
3
mean is
a.m. at
like,
coming
I mean,
to
obviously
you
I didn't,
flashback.
obviously I didn't word that. You know what I mean? Like I played that game when I was
Yeah.
what, like 12 or something, and like 20
You have
20
a
years
certain
on, like
nostalgic memory
like,
of it.
not even nostalgic. It's just like in my head, like that's what Final Fantasy
Just
VII
won't
is
leave.
about.
It won't leave
Yeah.
your head.
I will say, like, given the affinity people have with Final Fantasy VII, and I guess like its place in the history of like video games, like it's kind of people often talk to it about being one of the best games of all time. Like, I kind of wanted an unfiltered experience, I guess, and I was kind of hoping that's what this remake was going to be. It was like a modern retelling of that story, and the fact that it's deviated seemingly as much as it has,
It's like
irks
dramatically
me a little
deviated.
bit.
Like it
Yeah.
actually makes me wonder what they're gonna do with some major stuff towards the end. Like I actually don't. think
And that's the
that'll
thing. Like
happen now.
everyone talks about this big moment in this story that miraculously I've never had spoiled for me. Like I know
Yeah,
there's like a
like,
big
it's-
event, but I don't know what it is. And I don't like we've ascertained that didn't happen in the first remake, right? Like that was
No, it wasn't, and it was never
Yeah.
meant to happen in the first section anyway. Like it's
Yes, yeah, yeah.
I think that'll change, but I could be wrong.
But yeah,
And
that's
but
the kind of thing. I was looking forward to like this big like experiencing this for the first time, and it seems
Yeah.
that's not the case. We've got Billy.
That's the
joining
thing
show,
that's
everyone
why,
very
like,
excited.
I argue that this isn't necessarily like the best way to approach a remake. Like,
Yeah.
that's obviously another topic, but yeah, like, but then also like you used to always read all of these crazy rumors of things like you'd have to do certain things throughout the story to make this event not happen. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
you used to read all these like there was like urban legends and like
So
like,
they're kind of
cheats and all-
playing with the fandom of it a little bit as
yeah,
well.
like and now to actually maybe see that realized is also quite exciting. Like as somebody who once again has grown up with that story and that's how
Yeah.
it's played out. But yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have to wait and see.
Did
I don't even think
anyone
that'll happen
else-
in this game potentially.
No.
Did anyone
Yeah.
else find the whole 2-disc thing like weird that they would call that
Yeah.
as like a badge of honor almost? Like when
I think that's
Considering
really
you
cool for
download
many
most
reasons.
things anyway, I just like imagine it as being like the first part of the unlock code on the first disc and the second
but like
part
how
on
can
the
you
second.
even know this early that you're not going to get it down to like one disc?
I think it's all marketing.
Well,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it makes you think you're getting a big game. First of all,
Yeah, when
It's
they've
the
clearly
first
split it into
double-disc
3
game
games.
It's the first double disc game on PS5. And like I think that is just all marketing for sure.
Yeah.
Like I
I'd
don't
rather
think
they
that's
included
necessarily-
another SSD to help with my storage space on my
the
PS5.
game would be like $800.
It's got a nostalgic aspect as well of like, you know, the old school Final
Yeah.
Fantasy games being on multiple discs.
Yeah.
So I guess it's that.
Maybe the second disc is just the soundtrack. Yeah.
I
don't know.
I like
just don't
that. I
buy
don't
it.
know, but then I'm old, so like it's like they used to be 4 discs, you know.
The first one was 2 discs,
Gross.
wasn't it? On PS4.
Nah, 3.
3.
Oh yeah, no PS4. Was
I guess
2.
in the
Sorry,
PS4 one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, well, continuing to go around the grounds. Shannon, what was some of your highlights from the showcase? Anything we haven't mentioned yet?
I don't know if anyone's mentioned Prince of Persia. I like the look of that,
No,
having just
big
watched
announcement.
it again. I don't know if it was like opening material, and I just think the Prince of Persia in the last few years has had a really weird time, just with what we've spoken about with Sands of Time remake and things like that. So it was a nice surprise, and it didn't leak at all to my knowledge. So that was cool, and it does look really good for what it is. Obviously, Spider-Man, like it was cool to get that release date and some more info and the collector's edition and things like that.
Yeah.
And
I
the
do,
other
just
one,
on that. Sorry,
Yeah.
Shannon, just on that.
No.
Like, I love how these kind of big sort of mainstay franchises that have kind of gone and done like 3D things have like returned back towards its roots a little bit. Like Metroid Dread, obviously, sort of being one of them. Even within the showcase, we saw Sonic Superstars 2, which I thought looked really cool. Prince of Persia we've got as well, and I think that's like by the team that made Rayman Legends, if I'm not mistaken. Which again is a bit of confidence, I suppose, for the game. But yeah, I like that these franchises are going back to the roots somewhat. Pleased to see.
Yeah, for sure. And John Carpenter's Toxic Commando looked like fun and looked like one of the better zombie games that we've seen in recent times, just going off that trailer. So
Yeah.
there was a lot. Like scrolling down the list, like there wasn't much that I didn't like the look of in terms of looking cool or piquing my interest in some way. But yeah,
There was lots of like fantasy games, and lots of mobile fantasy games, like just didn't speak to me terribly much. The Lord of the Rings games, Return to Moria, that looks like Deep Rock Galactic meets Lord of the Rings. Like, sounds like a neat premise, but the trailer didn't do a lot for me. Yeah, the John Carpenter game though, Toxic Commando. Do you see that being more of a Days Gone style thing or a Left 4 Dead?
I think it'd be like Left 4 Dead-y, which I don't feel
Yeah.
like anything has really done well. Like Back 4 Blood was kind
Yeah.
of a miss. I
Should have
can't
been
think
it.
of what else, but I feel like there's been a few others that have come out and tried to capture that same feel and have fallen flat. The other one was Alan Wake 2. I don't know if anyone's touched on that, but just I know again we did see it a few weeks ago and like we're already all sold, but like the gameplay, it looked Alan Wakey, like but how it should in 2023. So I think definitely keen for that one.
Yeah, that was going to be the last one I was going to touch on, so I'm glad you mentioned it. Obviously, I don't have a history with Alan Wake. I feel like I say that about every game that comes up. But yeah, I was pleased to see Sam Lake come out on stage. Didn't know it was Norwegian. That was...
You were very excited by that.
I was taken
He's
aback.
Finnish.
Yeah,
Finnish,
sorry.
I was like, is that the same thing? And it's
Scandinavian someone. I must have heard him talk before, but just never put that. I don't know. Anyhow, the trailer looks great. I was pleased to see that it's like welcoming for newcomers, kind of starting the game with a new character that they're introducing. She's kind of new and fresh to this supernatural goings on. So it sounds like that she's going to be a bit of a vehicle for new players to kind of come into the
I
game.
like
And the
that.
fact that you can
That's
switch
smart.
between those two characters and progress the story how you want, kind of based on who you choose to play at any given moment. It's kind of cool. It wasn't clear to me if that was like GTA-esque switch at any time, or if it had kind of key moments in the story where you had the opportunity to switch over. But it does sound like there's some player agency one way or another there. And yeah, the trailer, seeing like some of the gameplay looked really good, as James pointed out, like heavily influenced of Resident Evil there as well. And you all knowing that I've become quite a fan of that in recent years, that spoke to me a lot. So yeah, pleased by like the cult angles and the spookiness of it. I'm sure this is going to be one I play when it comes out. I had planned to play Alan Wake Remastered before it does come out. I might still yet do that, but good to know that if other games compete for my time, I don't need to worry about it. Cool. Well, I think that's kind of all the key stuff spoken about. Plenty more other announcements there. If you're into your kind of comfy, cozy gamers, Fae Farm looked very much up your sort of street. And there were some interesting looking indie games as well with Under the Waves. I thought looked really quite interesting.
The Diablo-like one looked good too. I can't remember what that was. Path of Exile. Was it Path of Exile?
Yes. Yeah, that did look quite good as well. reminded me I want to go back to Diablo desperately as well. And Yes, Your Grace Snowfall, that was the other one I wanted to shout out. Had a really nice looking pixel art aesthetic too. So yeah, there was a fair few announcements. None of the heavy sort of hitters, but I think all in all a pretty decent showcase. And James, you wanted me to remind everyone there's no What the Wiki this episode because it's a bonus episode. Scheduling wise, I think we'll probably do another episode next week once we have Brody back. He's over there at Summer Games Fest. At the moment, can I say that, Shannon? You're looking at me funny. Do I need to? No, I can say that. I can't say that?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can say that.
So yeah, we'll have Brody on the show next week to hear about having gone hands-on with some of these games. But until then, happy gaming.
Bye.
Bye.